G'day, Mike from Aussie Mike's Bees, back to you after a bit of a break from posting videos to comment on what's happening in Australia right now, specifically in New South Wales, where I live and have my bees. You may or may not have heard around the world that we've had an outbreak of Varroa Destructor in Newcastle. That's a city about halfway up the coast of New South Wales, so it's at this stage it's well insulating the other states of Australia. Now what's happened? Well, straight away all of New South Wales went into lockdown, meaning us as beekeepers were not allowed to touch our hives for any reason, except for one reason, and that was to check for Varroa. So do sugar shakes, alcohol washes, drone brood, uncapping, like the standard tests for Varroa, and of course report. But there have been zones of various intensity established. So where the first incursion happened, they established a 10-kilometre radius, and that was a zone where every colony would be destroyed. What do I mean by destroyed? A bit like AFB, they use either petrol or gasoline for my US friends to destroy them, or gas. And gas, I think, was easier to use on feral colonies. Now I don't know that detail. My feet are not on the ground up there. I'm just going on the information that I get from the Department of Primary Industry. I don't watch the news. They tend to sensationalise and certainly misquote. So I'm only offering information in my videos here that I get directly from the DPI themselves. The response the authorities are putting into action was agreed to by the bodies of Australia nationwide that had anything to do with bees. So beekeepers themselves, both amateur and commercial, but also the farms that relied on pollination services, because they will be dramatically affected as well. And honey packers. So all of those organisations, professional and amateur alike, along with government, got together to work out a plan of attack for any incursion. Now, part of the DPI in New South Wales established what's called Sentinel hives at every port. So in New South Wales it's every shipping port and airport that have international travel, and those DPI inspectors circulate throughout the state checking hives, and that's how they discovered Varroa at the port of Newcastle. Do we know where that came from? We can't really nail down the ship that it came on, and therefore the country that it came from, and we can't really tell how long they'd been in the country. We certainly don't know which container. All we can do is just respond to the outbreak that's happened. And so far, after that initial Sentinel hive, it was tracked down to a particular commercial beekeeper. I'm not going to name names, I don't need to do that. He has posted a video of his own giving a talk about his experience. It was quite a moving video. If I can find the link, I'll put it down in the comments. The response from beekeepers throughout have been positive. We're all being hit hard, not allowed to get into the bees, and face the strong possibility of losing everything. Just go through an email, the latest email that I received from the DPI today, and go point by point what they are describing, what's happening, so that it fills you into. So as you can see here, this is an email from the Department of Primary Industries, dated the 2nd of July, and I got that at 10 to 5 in the afternoon. So it's a stakeholder update. Stakeholders being all those people that I described earlier. So we have the stakeholder response update, and it's continuing the efforts to eradicate Varroa mite, confirmed to be Varroa Destructor, and found in the surveillance hives of the Port of Newcastle. Now they've given excellent links to follow, and I will click on this link in particular to show the map of the various zones that we're talking about. So we can see they're letting us know about some new infected premises. So there's 4 additional infested premises detected at these towns, and all of the infested premises identified have been proved to be linked to the earlier cases. So it is the single outbreak spreading, not multiple incursions. And so the emergency zone, and we'll talk about that in a moment, has been expanded. Now we'll see, it says to go to see the emergency map on the DPI website to check your own location. Now everybody's involved. You've got the DPI, Land Services, Police, Rural Fire Service, and everybody else in the community to work together to basically save our apiary industry. This is just a quick notification of anybody that's bought honeybees, queen bees, nuke hives or hives anywhere within a 50-kilometre radius of that initial Port of Newcastle zone in the last 12 months. They're being urged to report that to the DPI so that they can be checked by the DPI and make sure that they don't actually carry mites. And they've given an easy to report link. The easier they make it, I think the more likely people will be to use it. A part of what happened initially was we locked down the whole state, and it was a 6-month government order. Now of course that takes us into the almond pollination period, so that could seriously affect our pollination and therefore our food availability in the new season. So we're lucky enough to be in winter at the moment, and it's wet and cold, not cold like North America way up north where it snows, but the bees aren't that active at the moment, and that's helping this contain the spread. As they say here, infected premises hive destruction, they euthanize all the colonies in that 10-kilometre radius zone. That's the eradication zone by the methods I said before, petrol, gasoline or gas. They're doing risk assessments now on options to decontaminate your external equipment. Now initially everything was burned, the lot, to eliminate the risk of any mites being there, but now they've backed off a little bit and they're doing a risk assessment to give the option of keeping your equipment. They'll only destroy the equipment if the assessment deems it necessary. Now unfortunately we've been getting severe weather coming up. We've had floods so many times this year already, and it's looking like that's happening again. So they're giving a little bit of leeway to beekeepers that have hives that are likely to be flooded, and they'll allow us to relocate those hives within the property. And if the whole property is going to go underwater as well, there's a possibility of relocating the hives elsewhere within the zone that you're in, not from one eradication zone to another. What to do if I'm in an emergency zone? Well, all beekeepers within that eradication, surveillance and notification zones need to report their hive location. And if you detect Varroa, call the hotline. That's most important. And also they're asking to notify of any feral colonies that you might happen to know about. But we've got a red zone of 10 kilometres eradication zone, and purple is a 25k zone, and that's the surveillance zone. That's where you've got to inspect for mites and also looking for those feral honeybees to find out where they are, and And the yellow zone is the 50k zone, and that's a biosecurity zone. You're to report where your hives are and any feral hives that you know about, but otherwise you leave your hives alone. Now initially they said we weren't allowed to even feed our hives. The only reason you could touch your hives was to test for Varroa, no other reason. But we're in winter and sometimes they need feeding, so perhaps they've seen the sense of, if a hive is starving, they may get robbed by stronger colonies, and that could increase the spread of Varroa. So we're now allowed to feed, but only with in-hive feeders, no open feeding of course, and no entrance feeders. Probably better, in my view, to use top feeders, not a frame feeder, so that you don't have to open up the hive and expose the bees. They've also given us some contacts for mental health, and some people are going to do it tougher than others. I think beekeepers by and large, particularly in the commercial field, they're pretty tough guys and women. Farmers by and large are pretty tough people, but we have contact information if you need that help. And I think that is a good thing to offer. Now, I checked to see what sort of fines are in place, and a few years ago it was a matter of hundreds of dollars, and more recently it was increased to thousands of dollars, and now the potential fine for this is $1.1 million. So any of you fellow New South Welshmen watching this who are tempted not to follow the rules in this, I urge you, please don't. If not for the good of all of us, just don't risk that $1 million fine. We're talking about a few $100 loss for a hobbyist, to tens of thousands, or if not hundreds of thousands, for commercial beekeepers. And if you're just a backyardie unregistered, look, don't do the risk. Now, by the way, they want everyone to report their hives whether they're registered with the DPI or not. Now, it's a matter of law that you register your hives in New South Wales with the DPI, and there's a ton of beekeepers out there that have never registered, and there's been fines applicable to anyone that's been caught not registering their hives, so being an unregistered beekeeper. So the DPI have now announced that there will be absolutely no repercussions for anybody who comes forward now to register their hives. There won't be any fines, any back fines, or nothing of that nature. A complete moratorium on registering and reporting your hives' locations now. This is so that we can get this mite thing under control. So let me tell you, I'm no fan of government telling me what to do with me and mine. I don't like that one little bit. But in this case, this is something that we sacrifice to the good of all. Our industry's been very, very lucky not to have had the mite problem so far. It will devastate our industry and food supplies, honey, pollination, almonds, blueberries, you name it. Next season, we're in strife, and everyone related, honey packers, grocery stores, anyone related to that honey bee industry will feel the pinch, and ultimately the consumer at the end of it, as if we don't have enough with skyrocketing fuel prices and everything else. So here we have the Department of Primary Industries website. Now this link I will post down the bottom, and this is where you can get up-to-the-date information. Anytime you click on the link, it shows the latest information. So it has a frequently asked questions on the response, and you click on that, and the usual thing. Relevant information, including for native bees, which is good to see. So click on that link for that, and you can see the biosecurity order. Now that's the actual government gazette that tells us what we have to do. The emergency order 2022. We're up to number 5 now. We started obviously with number 1 on the 22nd of June, and this is the 2nd of July Australia time, and all the information. I'm not going to go through all of that. It has a link on doing alcohol checks and sugar shake tests, but we've got to get into the map. So we'll go down to, we can see here the definition of the different zones: eradication, surveillance, notification and general biosecurity zones. So all of New South Wales, as you see here, is the emergency zone. Now incidentally, other states have banned any bee product coming from New South Wales across the border. Now technically nothing should be going across the border anyway, because we're not allowed to move our hives. So you can see Newcastle, maybe 2/3 of the way up. I said halfway up. This is Sydney right here. I'll zoom in a bit. So Newcastle is this city here, our second largest city in the state. And so you can see it's well away from the state borders at the moment. So it's got a long way to get up to Queensland, a very long way to South Australia, to the west, and quite a distance to get to Melbourne or Victoria to the south. So the area of most concern is Newcastle is where it started, and through mostly one commercial beekeeper's moving his bees around, they've traced it to these other sites. And hats off to the DPI and all of the people involved, the team from around Australia who are involved with this to track everything. Good records kept by beekeepers have allowed them to trace that through. The latest outbreak is down here, getting closer to where I am. So it's actually spread a little bit more. I'm just where my arrow is here. So I'm just outside the 50k zone, but there were 2 more discoveries here. So this is the 20k zone, obviously not a circle anymore because it's 2 different areas. And I was at a beekeepers club meeting last night, and we talked about this problem at length, and most of the members fall within this 50k zone. Our membership covers a very broad area around where I'm circling now. The mood was a little bit dark, but we're still, as I said before, very prepared for the worst and very hopeful for the best. Now the president, the ABA, is on the team up at Maitland, up at Newcastle Way. So incidentally, this is where Tocal College is and where the DPI are based. They're running the show from there, and our president, Sheila Stokes, is keeping us very well informed of what's happening on the ground, and also everyone's opinion on how successful this eradication is going. Because on the face of it, it looks like it's getting out of control. But in reality, according to the people on the ground, it's being very successful, and they are very confident that they will succeed in eradicating this outbreak. They're taking it extremely seriously. They've called for volunteers now to help out. So anyone that can volunteer, there's a link on the page that you can follow. That's it for this video and showing on this map how far it's spread. When you look at the bigger picture of New South Wales, it's not massive. and if they keep doing the eradication of these red zones and testing in the purple zone and also testing in the yellow zone and notifying specifically where bees are, it's a better chance of success for all of us. I've got online and reported feral colonies that I know about. So just as a parting message to anyone in New South Wales, even if you're not a beekeeper and you know of bees in a tree, or if you know that the old guy over the back fence has kept bees for years but you notice that he hasn't been in them for a long time, maybe he's too old to look after them, it's not dobbing, it's doing the right thing. Report those hives too. He might be too old or might not even know that there's a problem. If he's not registered, he's not being notified. So just any hives, it doesn't matter if the same hives gets reported by 20 different people. All that does is confirm that yes, there's a hive there, so that they know to respond to it. Thank you again for everyone who's getting involved in the eradication program, all of those professionals and amateurs alike, and for the DPI for keeping us up to date with what's happening and keeping us well informed, which they are. And I plead with all the beekeepers of New South Wales, be vigilant, be prepared for the worst, hope for the best, hope and pray for the best, and let's get through this. So this is Mike from Aussie Mike's Bees. Thank you for watching.